Hook, you ever watch the place you love your safe, quiet refuge turn into something poisoned right before your eyes? I did. The lake behind my house, the one where my daughter learned to swim and where my dad used to fish, started glowing this sickly green one morning. The ducks stopped coming. The air smelled like something burning, even when there wasn't a fire. And when I found out who did it, it wasn't some faceless company miles away. It was my own homeowners association, the people I waved to every week. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd just complain on Facebook and let it go. But they didn't know who they were dealing with, because when I found out what they'd done, I called the EPA. And what happened after that? Well, let's just say the entire neighborhood heard the knock on their door the morning it started. I was standing on my back deck with a cup of coffee, just like every other day. The sun had barely climbed over the tree line, spreading that soft gold across the surface of Willow Lake. Normally, it looked like glass, peaceful, perfect. But that morning something was wrong. The water shimmered with streaks of lime green, like someone had poured paint into it. At first, I thought maybe it was algae bloom. That happened sometimes in late summer. But this was October. The air was crisp, and there hadn't been a warm week in a while. The green looked too bright, almost neon, and the smell had hit me like an open trash bin in July, sharp, metallic. Wrong. I remember calling my neighbor, Jack. He'd lived 2 doors down for years, retired army guy, the kind who notices everything. "Jack, you seeing this lake?" I asked when he picked up. There was a pause, then a grunt. "Yeah, been watching it all morning. Thought maybe it was runoff. But it's spreading." By noon, the entire south side of the lake looked like toxic soup. Dead fish floated near the reeds. The herons that used to nest there were gone. Even the frogs had gone silent. My 8-year-old daughter, Emily, came outside holding her fishing rod, still half asleep. "Daddy, can we go fishing today?" I didn't know what to say. How do you tell a kid that her lake might be dead? That night I started making calls to the HOA first. They were supposed to maintain the lake, handle landscaping, keep everything community safe, as they always bragged about in their newsletters. I left messages. I emailed. Nothing. 2 days later, they sent out an official notice. It was cold and polished, the kind of letter that sounds professional but says nothing real. Residents may notice temporary discoloration of the lake due to approved maintenance procedures. The situation is under control. Please refrain from contacting external agencies. Approved maintenance procedures. That's when I knew something was off. So I did what any stubborn dad with a half-broken laptop would do. I started digging. I found invoices on the HOA website that listed aquatic management treatments. A company name popped up, Greenway Environmental Solutions. I Googled them. Turns out they'd been fined before for improper chemical disposal. That's when my stomach dropped. Over the next week, the smell got worse. The grass near the waterline turned yellow. My dog, Scout, started limping after running near the shore. I took him to the vet, who said it might be chemical exposure. That's when something inside me snapped. I went to the next HOA meeting, clutching a folder full of printed invoices and photos. The board sat there in their polos and pearls, sipping bottled water while pretending to care. I stood up and held out a picture of the dead fish floating in the water. "You dumped poison in our lake," I said, "and you think a letter's going to make it okay?" The president, a woman named Carol, who treated the HOA like her personal empire, gave me that tight smile people use when they're trying to stay polite. "Mr. Sanders, everything was done in compliance with regulations," she said. I laughed loud. "Then you won't mind if I send these photos to the EPA, right?" Her smile disappeared. That night, I made the call. My hands were shaking as I typed the email to the Environmental Protection Agency. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if they'd even respond. But 2 weeks later, 3 white trucks rolled into the neighborhood. Men in clean suits and masks started taking water samples, snapping photos, asking questions. And suddenly, everyone in the HOA went silent. They wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. The newsletter stopped. Carol's perfect smile vanished from her morning walks. But I wasn't celebrating yet, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that exposing the truth is only the beginning. The real fight starts when people realize you're not afraid to stand up. And I was just getting started. It was early on a Tuesday when it happened. I was working from home, sipping cold coffee and scrolling through the neighborhood group chat, which had turned into a war zone overnight. Half the people were furious, screaming about government interference and property values. The other half thanked me quietly through private messages. afraid to speak up in public. Then came the sound that made my heart stop. Knock, knock, knock. Not at my door, at Carol's. 3 houses down. I could see everything from my window. The same EPA officials who'd taken water samples were standing on her porch, clipboards in hand, badges glinting in the morning light. She opened the door in her usual pastel cardigan, but this time she looked smaller, fragile even. I watched her lips move, her face drain of color. A moment later, one of the men handed her a thick envelope. That was it. The moment the HOA froze. Word spread fast. By evening, every board member's name was attached to an official federal investigation for illegal disposal of hazardous chemicals without a permit. Apparently, the maintenance treatment wasn't maintenance at all. It was industrial pesticide waste from a landscaping contractor trying to save money, and the HOA had signed off on it to cut expenses. They'd literally poisoned our lake to save a few $1,000s on their annual budget. The EPA didn't waste time. They cordoned off sections of the lake, put up warning signs, and started cleanup. Trucks came in, pumping out the top layer of sludge, testing soil, testing air. I remember standing by the caution tape with Emily holding my hand. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Are they fixing it, Daddy?" "Yeah," I said softly. "They're fixing it." But inside, I wasn't so sure. For weeks, I watched the cleanup team work in silence. Neighbors who used to ignore me started nodding again. Some thanked me quietly in their driveways. Jack brought me a beer one night and said, "You did the right thing, kid." Most folks would have looked away, but not everyone saw it that way. Carol resigned, of course, but before she disappeared, she left one last HOA letter in everyone's mailbox. It called me a disruptive influence. Said my actions brought unnecessary attention and distress to the community. I read it 3 times, laughed, then tacked it on my fridge, because if doing the right thing makes you a disruption, then maybe the world needs more of them. By winter, the lake had started to heal. The water was still murky, but the smell was fading. New ducks had begun to return, timidly landing near the north shore. The EPA left behind a report showing the contamination levels dropping every week. They told us the lake could recover fully within a year. One Saturday, I saw a group of kids skating on the frozen surface, laughing, shouting, alive. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel that ache in my chest. That night, as the sun sank behind the trees, I sat on the deck again. Emily came out and leaned on the railing beside me. "You're like a superhero," she said suddenly. I smiled. "Superheroes don't fill out government forms, kiddo," she grinned. "Yeah, but they fight bad guys." Her words hit harder than she knew, because the truth is, the bad guys aren't always strangers. Sometimes they're people you wave to every day, people who smile in meetings and tell you not to worry. And sometimes, doing the right thing means being hated by the people closest to you. That's what they don't tell you about standing up. It's lonely, it's messy, it's terrifying, but it's also necessary. Months later, the EPA wrapped up the case. The HOA was fined heavily, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The money went toward restoration and wildlife recovery. The board was replaced, new rules were written, and for the first time, the community meetings were open, transparent, honest. When the cleanup was finally declared complete, I walked down to the dock with Emily. The lake looked almost like it used to, still, clear, alive. The reflection of the trees shimmered across the surface, and I could almost hear my dad's voice again, teaching me how to cast a line. Emily tossed a pebble into the water. "It's pretty again," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, because we didn't stay quiet. The wind rustled the reeds, and somewhere across the lake a heron called out. Life was coming back, not just to the water, but to all of us. As I watched the ripples spread, I realized something simple but powerful. You don't have to be loud to make change. You just have to refuse to look away. That's how you protect what you love. That's how you win. Final message for YouTube narration. Tone: sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought on battlefields. They're fought in your own backyard, against people who should have cared but didn't. When they dumped chemicals in my lake, they thought they could silence me. But the truth doesn't scare when you stand behind it. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: never underestimate the power of one voice, one person who refuses to let wrong stay hidden. Because when you speak up, even the strongest walls of silence begin to crack.